Welcome back. This is Lesson 5 in the class Introduction to Curriculum and Instruction for Gifted and Talented Students. Thought this was a really great cartoon example that we need to keep in mind for our gifted students. All you've done is chisel all day. Do something useful like helping your brother drag those rocks up the hill. So he's getting chastised for, being creative and not doing something more practical. So this is kind of just made me laugh when I saw it. That's probably some of the things that we're asking our gifted students to not be engaged in, which really the creativity piece we know is at the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. Wow, this looks familiar, doesn't it? I hope so. I hope you have this memorized and it's in your heart of hearts. We've covered all of the different things about differentiation because it really is a key to working well with our gifted students and any population of students, but particularly our gifted friends. And last time we talked about teachers differentiating for content, process, and product. So I want to now delve into Susan Weinbrenner's book called Teaching Gifted Kids in Today's Classroom. And you have access to this book, and I'm just going to kind of work our way through this a bit. There's going to be some tasks involved as we work through this book. This book is a real practical, strategy-driven book that helps us day to day do what we know is best for gifted students. When we pair this with Tomlinson's book, it really gives us the theory that we need in order to work well with gifted students. Here's a quote from her, Susan Weinbrenner. Gifted kids need consistent, daily challenging opportunities to move forward in their own learning and in heterogeneous classes and public education settings that frequently doesn't happen because of the confusion of the meanings of two-word teach and learn, which are not synonyms. Teachers are given a body of stuff to teach, and it is assumed sometimes by their administrators that the exception is thou shalt teach this to, or the expectation is thou shalt teach this to all kids. I believe that the only accountability is to document that kids have learned X, Y, or Z. And my job with teachers is to help them understand that if some kids can provide that documentation ahead of an upcoming unit, that they should be given full credit for their mastery and be allowed to use their learning time, not for extra credit, in which I have no belief or support at all. So we'll talk more about that idea of extra credit in another session when we talk about assessment. But what she's basically saying is that if a student can provide evidence and data up front that they know the material, they should be given credit for that, and they should be able to move into a more complex learning situation, which I fully support. But because data is so important, we need to make sure to pre-assess and document what students already know. So what do gifted students need? According to Weinbrenner, she believes that they need forward academic progress each semester or year, compacting of grade level standards, which we talked about last time, differentiation opportunities, knowledge that they won't have to do more work than classmates. And that's super important because those who work with gifted students who've not been trained oftentimes believe more is better. That because students finish quickly, they can do more work. And if you want to burn out a gifted student fairly quickly on the idea of learning is just to keep piling more and more work on top of them. That is not what we want for gifted students. We want different work. So if I could leave you with any big aha moment in this whole experience is more work is not good. Different work is what our gifted students need. Knowledge that they won't have to do more work, super important like we just said, and guarantee that extension work will not lead to lower recorded grades. Now as a gifted student, if you gave me a challenge and you graded me on that challenge and it changed my overall grade, I wouldn't want to do it. Now, I want you to envision a fruit tree, and you see that the really amazing fruit is out on a limb of the tree. It's not right next to the trunk. And you've asked the student to climb the tree and get the fruit, and they're holding on to the trunk. And you're like, well, look out there. That fruit's really good. I want you to come on out here. And you try to entice them out there, but yet you're not giving them the support they need because you're going to penalize them for taking a risk. So it's kind of a philosophical thing for you to think through, that we don't want to penalize our students for taking risks, because risks are, well, they're scary. And so if we want them to think harder and deeper, we don't need to tie grades to that. We need to tie additional motivating factors to that. So that's just something to think through. What should be differentiated? Well, according to her, content, process, and product. Well, that sounds familiar. That's something that we've already discussed in Carolyn Tomlinson's book. She also suggests that the learning environment and expectations can be differentiated, and then the assessment techniques as well can be differentiated. So here's some possible adjustments to kind of expand your thinking. Lessen the amount of grade level work that they must do. Increase the pace of the lessons. Extend the content so it reaches beyond grade level parameters. Link to their interests to increase motivation. Give them choice to foster self-directed learning. Allow them to work together on extension activities. Change your interaction with them so you are a guide versus a sage. And that's the famous line, I think I've already used it. You want to be the guide on the side and not the sage in the stage, like the large and in charge person. You want it to be a student-directed environment. Welcome their parents as partners in their learning. Super important. Gifted education techniques benefit all the students because they're using authentic sources. They focus on problem solving and inquiry, not just memorization. It enables interaction of content components, encourages student choice, and it links content to student interest. So we have a buy-in. We're motivated. Always remember, gifted students are gifted at all times, not just when they are in special classes or group. Their different learning needs must be recognized and served in all learning situations in which they have advanced abilities. So it's not that they're only gifted for an hour of the day or once a week. Now, as we move into chapter 2, and I do want to remind you of the book that we're talking about here, Teaching Gifted Kids in Today's Classroom. And now there is a website link to all the content, which helps us download different strategies, and we can then make them our own strategies by creating documents. In the past, there used to be a CD in the books, but now I have given you access to the actual website, and you will see that in Blackboard. So in chapter 2, it talks about compacting, and we've talked a bit about it, so I just want to remind us again that you might hear, I'm bored, or you might have a parent show up and tell the principal that my child is bored in Mr. Jackson's class. Boredom equals the frustration students feel when they are forced to learn what they have already mastered. Do you know students who could have demonstrated mastery of specific course content at the beginning of the school year, or even the beginning of the semester, or even the beginning of the unit that you're doing? It behooves us as educators to have the integrity to delve into that, to make sure that we're giving students an opportunity to tell us what they already know. Compacting already mastered content by pre-assessing knowledge or allowing faster-paced learning of the content, and differentiating instruction so that students can work on higher-level activities that truly challenge them. So here are 7 steps to successful compacting to add to what we've already learned. Identify the standards, give students time to examine the content, offer a pre-test opportunity to volunteers after explaining the level of achievement needed to pass, have extension activities available for those who can compact out. Eliminate all standardized test drill, practice, and review for students who already know that content. Decide how you will keep accurate records and devise a method for storing compacting documents, which I know many of us keep data notebooks now, so that shouldn't be an issue. When it's time to grade, students experience compacting and skill work are formally graded only on grade level standards, unless they are experiencing accelerated content assigned to a higher grade level. So if they're doing higher level math or other assignments, that's a different story. Although their extension activities are not formally graded, they earn the same letter grade for each day they are following the expected working conditions. So the most difficult first, and that's compacting one lesson at a time. Teach a concept or standard, give the class time to practice, and then we've talked about offering the most difficult first strategy so that students who need less practice can do so. Pre-test for the volunteer strategy, students briefly examine the upcoming week's content, and volunteers take the end of the week's assessment on Monday. If they score 90% or higher, they're excused from the week's activities and receive full credit. They are free to work on self-selected extension activities for the week, things that you've already predetermined and that you've agreed upon. Now, I noticed that Weinbrenner always mentioned the words volunteer, but having done this myself, sometimes students aren't going to volunteer to do this. It looks like it might be a little bit of work. So therefore, I must engage the parents to help me by offering an appropriate challenge to those students who aren't willing to step out and do the extra work. And so sometimes it may not always be a volunteer situation. Students briefly examine the upcoming chapter's content. This is for a learning contract. Volunteers take the end of the chapter assessment. Those who score 80% use a learning contract throughout the chapter. They join the class for instruction only when a standard is being taught, which they aren't aware of or haven't had experience with, and they need direct instruction. And then they work on extension activities. Homework. If daily work is differentiated, then homework must be as well. And some teachers work together to prepare monthly homework extension menus for advanced students to keep at home. Or that way, when they don't have to do the regularly assigned homework, they can do alternative work. Or they can work on a long-term project as well. Now, this is the compactor that we've already seen before. It looks a little different, so I wanted to show it to you. We see Renzulli and Linda Smith's name at the top. You type the student's name in again, the strength, document how you know this, and then the alternative activities that they would experience. Now, in her book, she is giving you one of these documents that you can take, download off the website, and you can make it your own. Now, there are some rules that you need to come up with when you are having students do independent work. It's not a free-for-all. They have to follow specific guidelines, and at any time they cannot follow these guidelines, they're back in whole group, okay? So it requires quite a bit of motivation and self-management skills on the part of the student. And they have to do their work without bothering anyone. That one's pretty important. Work on your extension activity without calling attention to yourself and not talking while the teacher is teaching. Refrain from asking the teacher a question while he or she is working with other students. Do the extension activity you have agreed to complete. If you finish it, before the class is finished, choose another one. Keep records of the task you're working on the way your teacher has explained. And I often found that in the independent work, sometimes it wasn't done properly. It wasn't done well. And so we had to go back to the drawing board because not all students who are advanced in their abilities have strong work ethic. And so we need to work with them as well to do quality work. So listen to the teacher's lesson if you're required to do so. Ask any questions you have about the lesson while it's being taught. Do the problems or activities you're asked to do. And then it just goes on to talk about working with a partner and other rules. So you definitely need to have management plans in place when you do the compactor. I want to move into the idea of a learning contract. The learning contract as well can be found in this book, and it can be one of the things that you select because one of the tasks you will have is to select several strategies to modify and make your own for your own classroom, because we want this to be practical and something that you can use. And this document just goes on to show the parts that you would fill in, the extension activities. This is an agreed upon contract that everyone signs so that we're all aware of what should be going on when a student is not involved in whole group instruction. Chapter 3 moves into a little bit more compacting and differentiating for content. In content, where the material is new to them, gifted students should be allowed to move through it at a faster pace. So this also presents a problem, because if you're having whole group instruction and it's something that the student needs to know, they might be able to accomplish the material in a very quick manner, yet oftentimes we have them set through the entire process. And just like the young girl Anne that we mentioned a few days ago, they cannot read slow. They can't take exorbitant amount of time. Their mind thinks differently. So it's important that you could then employ something called a study guide method, and that is explained very well in this book, and that could be one of your options as well. It's at the start of a unit, students may choose to follow a prepared study guide of the material and agree to meet the assessment checkpoints by pursuing their own independent study. So in essence, they go through the unit very quickly, meeting the benchmarks that you've set for them. Students who are using the study guide method do not have to do the actual work for the unit. They are only responsible for learning the required standards at their own pace and then being tested on them, and so then they are free to do the alternative activity. And here's what a study guide looks like. And this document as well can be downloaded and manipulated to meet your needs for what you're doing in your own classroom. There are two ways to use a study guide. You can use it by itself as a differentiation tool, or you can actually use it with an extension menu that happens to be related to the unit, so that that is the activities that they will be doing when they have the free time away from the group. Who should use this? Students who are competent independent readers, curious about topics related to the standards, interested in becoming a resident expert on a related topic, are already achieving in this subject area at a B level or higher. Here's a basic geometry study guide that I've included for you to check out. So you can look on Blackboard and you can look at how someone has adapted this. If you see anything that you would love to use, go for it. All these documents have already been created. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to include levels for elementary, middle school, and high school as well. What is the teacher's role? Your role during independent study is to be less a sage on the stage. So take yourself out of this role and be more of that guide on the side. Be that partner that they need in order to be successful. Thank you.